So in the late 80s, when Tom and I had a sailboat that we kept on Seneca Lake named Martha's Ring, because I'm not a big jewelry person.
Okay. So you instead of the ring, you got it. Okay.
So we lived in Binghamton, which is about an hour and a half away, and we kept our sailboat on Seneca or on Cayuga Lake then. And on rainy days, we went to wineries, and then you could cover the wineries of the Finger Lakes in a day.
Okay.
Be back on the boat for dinner. And so we were using up frequent flyer miles. Tom worked for IBM, and so when he wasn't on a sailboat or living in Binghamton, he was traveling around mostly the Asian countries, purchasing printed circuit boards for IBM. And he had gazillions of miles on Pan Am. And it
jealous.
Like, yeah. And it looked like Pan Am was not going to last forever.
Yeah.
So we said, let's just have like a crazy eating and drinking weekend in San Francisco, and let's fly first class to San Francisco, use up our miles, and eat and drink our way out there. Sure, we'll go to Napa for half a day, but let's just do 5 days of insanity. And somewhere across the country, in the middle of our second bottle of Mom's sparkling wine, we said, hey, you know how we've been talking about a business that we could do together? Maybe we want to start a winery.
Really?
So our eating and drinking trip still was an eating and drinking trip. We did eat and drink a lot.
You must have drank and drank to finally come to the, yes, let's do this.
Well, so the whole business trip turned into, less art museums and gardens and many more wineries. And then we came back here and spent a lot of time in the Cornell Library researching winemaking and grape growing and ag economics, things we knew nothing about. And
so no history up to, no experience up to that
I was
point.
a piano performance major with a philosophy minor that was practicing trial law. And Tom was a chemistry major, an analytical chemist that got into printed circuit board manufacturing and then purchasing, that ran around the world buying things for less expensive parts for IBM's computers.
Okay.
And so we spent 3 years building a business plan and convinced ourselves that we could actually not lose tons of money at it. We were wrong, but...
okay, what year was this again?
This was in the late 80s.
Late 80s, okay.
And so after pretty much 2 years of a lot of library work and building spreadsheets, we said, okay, we think we can do this. So we started looking for property. Well, there were very few wineries then. When we actually opened in 94, we were the 21st winery on Seneca Lake. That shows you how small.
Sure.
So,
and how many are there now?
Well over 150
just on
the
Seneca?
Finger Lakes.
So
in the Finger Lakes,
okay.
70 plus.
Okay.
So going to realtors to look for property in an area that's spread out across 6 counties with no multiple listing service was a bit of a challenge. And so realtors were showing us things on Cayuga Lake where you could only grow natives and hybrids, and we said we will make vinifera wine only. Which was totally nuts. Back in the 80s, there was, the only two even trying it were Dr. Frank and Herman Weimer. Everybody else had some hedge fund of something.
Okay.
And so...
Now, was that because of where you spent your time?
I guess we were wine snobs, and we really didn't think the native and hybrid grapes made as good wines. I think they didn't then, because the winemaking overall was... It's not necessarily that... natives, I don't think, make as good wine, but there are some hybrids that can make really, really lovely wines in very capable, knowledgeable hands. Unfortunately, in my opinion, to become a capable, knowledgeable winemaker, it takes 20 or 30 years, which is why people do it for generations in Europe. It's a steep learning curve. So we kept looking. We were buying grapes, actually, from Tom Mitchell, who runs Fallbright Winemaker's Shop over on Cayuga Lake. He's a little home winemaking shop. He actually has grapes for people to buy, so if people want to... He's the only place you could buy red vinifera grapes to try with. So we were buying grapes from him, and we learned that he had been the vineyard manager for all of Taylor's properties, because the ultimate successor to all of the properties that Gold Seal owned was Taylor. Taylor was then, in the late 80s, early 90s, being managed from California and France, some kind of leveraged management buyout. And Tom was still the nominal overall manager of about 1,200 acres of vineyards throughout the Finger Lakes. So he started talking to us and telling us stories about the vineyards. He learned what we were doing or thinking we were doing, and he was very protective of this property, and if he had had the money, I think he would have bought it. But he was also, I think, just enough older than us to be at that point of I'm too old to do
Right.
this from scratch.
Right.
I gotta not.
You guys are still in the hazy.
I was 29. I believed I could do anything and I would live
for the rest of my
forever.
life.
And of course I'll never retire.
Right.
So he said, well, I know of this property. I think it's for sale because they had decided to sell off a lot of their New York properties because they were paying taxes on them. And certainly in the late 80s, nobody believed fine vinifera wines coming out of the Finger Lakes was
Right.
a significant business development plan.
So what was that where people were, like Noah, people were laughing at you?
Oh, yeah.
As you were planting the Cabernet.
It was really, yeah. I joke now when I go to New York, I say, Standing Stone Vineyards was founded to grow exceptional Riesling and Gewürztraminer. And the sommeliers in New York now look at me like, oh, wise one. I'm like, you don't know how stupid that was. You could not give away Riesling.
Right.
And you couldn't even get people to try Gewürztraminer. You know, fine wine American consumers drank oaky Chardonnay and Cabernet.
Yeah.
And now Riesling's hot and we win. So I'm very visionary.
Yeah. You just didn't know it at the time.
Right? I had to believe. But it was so clearly, and it's interesting because we're doing the pre-excursion tomorrow at Ventosa, which is on women and wine. And at first I was like, I get tired of talking about women, you know, why are we better than men? But it was interesting. It really was like a calling for both of us because there's no other reason we'd still be here. I mean, it's, you know, financially, it's draining. You know, we worked forever to keep paying for it. I worked for 10 years as a lawyer. Tom worked for 15 years at IBM. So 25 years of full-time corporate type jobs is how we paid for this because we didn't have that proverbial large fortune.
Yeah.
So it was. So why did we do it? We're nuts. I mean,
and you just kept on and kept on and kept on.
Like, yeah,
and it sounded like you were able to.
At some point, we
those.
stopped losing money. At 10 years in, we just found we couldn't hire. There still weren't enough people here that believed fine Finger Lakes wine. I mean, it's like. Yeah, the egos of winemakers, they were getting a little competitive. A few people were bringing in trained winemakers, but the ownership, the management, when you really examined what people were doing, everybody was hedging their bets. Okay, I gotta sell this in my tasting room. I'm not bidding anywhere. You couldn't give away anything in New York City, our biggest market. And so we just said, one of us has to be here. We can't afford an expensive winemaker. We can't afford a trained vineyard guy. So it's going to be me because IBM has better benefits.
Right.
So Tom stayed working. At that point, I think he was commuting to China.
Oh, okay. Well, do you have contracts there now?
Yeah.
They love the wine.
I know. It's funny. And we put me here as the full farm manager. So we joke that we think I might be the only female in the state of New York that also has a pesticide applicator license, a hunting license, and there's one other thing. And we kept, probably the first 3 years I was running it, we kept consultants. And then Tom one day said, you know, everything they're telling you, you know what to do. You're telling me what you're doing. You're telling me your plan. And when they pick the blends, you've already picked it. We've just gone in different directions to test it because we always test everything and we always taste with teams because I think you can get cellar blind so easily. But he said, really, it's all coming from you. Do you need the training wheels anymore?
Right.
Can you cancel the consultants and just get on with it?
Yeah, that's kind of nice. Something that gives you that confidence.
I was like, oh my God, I have no scientific background. I don't even know half the words you're talking about, but the dirty work of making wine is really being dirty, being a janitor, keeping things clean, topping up barrels, being willing to test. You know, being willing to taste frequently. I mean, during fermentation, my assistant and I try to taste every lot at least 4 times a day because you can make such quick changes that you can have the wine all done in 3 weeks, and then you don't need to clean up any messes. You don't need to, you know, cover up any. If you pay attention and don't sleep at all during harvest, you can make phenomenal wine. Yeah. And then the rest of the year, it's just refining and keeping it clean and watching it grow. Right. And it's, you know, it's kind of fun. You're on a high from harvest anyway, so you might as well just work all the time. It's the most beautiful time.
So when was Tom able to come on board?
He came on board full time at the beginning of 2007.
Okay.
I threatened them that either. Well, it had just gotten big enough, and we had enough things going on. It was like, we either need to sell this place because I can't run it by myself, or you need to be here running it with me. And he's basically full-time in the vineyard during the growing season. It's just, it's enough to keep it all going and to go right. I mean, I know people take vacations in the summer when they own vineyards. I don't know how they sleep on vacation, because we don't miss 24 hours without, oh my God, what's going on?
So when do you get to relax? When do you get to relax?
Theoretically, January.